357 Magnum versus 45 ACP and short barrels. And what we have today is our Winchester Elite Defender. This used to be called the PDX-1 Defender. And basically what this is the Winchester Ranger bonded, packaged as just regular people ammo, not law enforcement ammo. So our 357 Magnum is a 125 grain bonded jacketed hollow point rated at 1325 feet per second. So that's a pretty low rating. And then our 45 ACP is a 230 grain bonded jacketed hollow point rated at 920 feet per second. I'm going to use my 2-inch barrel Taurus 605 to test the 357 Magnum and my Smith & Wesson Shield 45 with the 3.3-inch barrel to test the 45 ACP. So this is kind of a personal test to me because I used to carry that 45 ACP in a Glock 36 10 years ago. And back then I had no idea whether or not that would perform well or not. I just assumed it would because it said Winchester stopped the threat. And I just assumed at that time that most ammo works, and I think a lot of people are in that situation now where they just assume it. So I'm really curious if it would have worked very well back then if I had needed it. So we're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy I get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic gel test. So I'm going to go into plain 10% clear ballistics to see what the best potential of those cartridges are. No fabric in the way that could potentially clog a hollow point, no rib simulation that could potentially slow down its penetration, and that'll be our best potential to see how these perform. Then I'm going to move on to doing more of a real world simulation. 4 layers of sweatshirt material on this first 3-inch piece that represents hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard that represents hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, then another 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard at the back to represent hitting back ribs. Clear ballistics is roughly a half representation of the density of flesh, so 3 inches and 16 inches is more like 1.5 inches and 8 inches in real flesh. So this is like a 9.5-inch thick individual with ribs on the front and back with our real world simulation. So hopefully we can keep those bullets in this first block without passing through that back rib simulation. If we do, it's pretty much a success for penetration anyway. So we'll do a plain clear ballistic shot, then a real world simulation shot, and then I will shoot the steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up we have our 357 Magnum 125 grain bonded jacketed hollow point rated at 1325 feet per second. That's likely through a 4 or a 6-inch barrel, so we're not going to get that out of this little 2-inch barrel. But let's see how close we get to 1325. For reference, most full power 357 125 grains will do anywhere between 1200 and 1250 feet per second. So let's see what we get with our Winchester Defender. $11.27, $12.26, $12.26, $12.39, $12.67. So not very consistent velocity, but even though it's a lower than normal rated velocity and it has less recoil than typical, out of a snub it's still matching full power rounds that would be fired through a snub. So that's not bad overall. So our 45 ACP, 230 grain bonded jacketed hollow point. We're rated at 920 feet per second, probably through a 5-inch barrel. Let's see what we get out of my 3.3-inch Shield 45. $8.43, $7.98. And we have a hard primer or something like that. So I'm going to keep this muzzle down range here for a minute here. It's probably fine at this point. Yeah. Barely a dimple on that on that round. I'll get to that later. Let's keep going here. 800, 853, 855. So yeah, not super consistent there either. Pretty typical. It's not a plus P, so you know it's a little bit more velocity than target ammo, which does about 750 out of this pistol with 230 grain. So it's slightly warm, but not particularly fast. So Let's hit our ballistics gel block and see how these two compare. All right, first up we have our 357 Magnum into plain clear ballistics. Let's see how this does. All right. Now with this, our 45, I don't know what to expect. The only other time I've tested this out of a short barrel was 10 years ago, and I shot it into water jugs with denim on the front. I said, that expanded huge. That did really well. Let's see what we get here with our 45. Let's go take a look. All right, so wow. I didn't think I was going to get expansion on that, to be honest, because it was moving so slow out of that short barrel. I mean, it's not specifically designed for a short barrel, so I thought 800 feet per second. No, it's not going to expand, but it looks like it expanded right away. And I see a lot of striation cutting, which means it's definitely petals expanding, not just tumbling or something like that causing that damage. First 3-inch piece on the bottom, our 357, on the top, our 45. The 357 is a little bit bigger energy dump, but the 45 is more consistent along that path. So not bad overall. And we have a larger wound path there with our 45, obviously, just because that hit a lot harder. But both are similar penetration here. So really good, consistent cutting along that path with our 357 Magnum. And we went to 12.5 inches from my straight on view here. So pretty good. Now our 45 ACP, we went to about 13.5, an inch more with the 45. So didn't penetrate that far and dumped a lot of energy. Not too bad. Now let's put on our rib simulations and put it on our fabric and see how these compare in our real world simulation. All right, our real world simulation, 4 layers of sweatshirt material followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics represents hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard that represents hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and another 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard at the back to represent hitting back ribs. So you got to remember that's a half representation of the density. So, you know, whatever we get in gel would be half that distance in real flesh. So I'm hoping to keep these within that back rib simulation so they don't pass through. So let's see what we get with our 357 Magnum from our snub here. Now let's hit that with our 45 ACP. Let's go take a look. I kind of thought this might happen. I was hoping it wouldn't. But that 45 didn't do so well. Didn't expand. And here's the thing. I talk about damage. If you look at this bottom track, it might be hard to see with this camera, but there's a lot of striation cutting. Up here, there's a lot of damage, but it's smooth. There's bubbles. And that tells you that it was tumbling, and it's going to slowly get larger as I talk here because it tumbled through and it's causing bubbling, and air is just causing it to kind of pull apart a little bit. As where the bottom here, that's going to stay the same size because that's striation cutting. And we look at our first 3-inch here, our 357 still had ton of energy dump. Our 45, that fabric alone is what caused this problem because there's no energy dump in this first 3-inch piece here as where there was without the fabric. So the fabric alone clogged that 45 and made it fail here. So looking at our rib simulation, we're going to see the same thing here. Our 357 here, our 45 here. So our 357 is dumping energy quite well. It's doing pretty well overall. So our 357 Magnum, we went a little bit less than before. We went about to 11 3/4. We're really close to meeting that minimum we want to see, but because there's ribs in there, rib simulation, I'm going to count that as a success because when we did our plain gel shop, it still went that far. So it's really just the ribs slowing that down, and you know, the technical protocol doesn't include rib simulation. So I'm going to say that's pretty good. It's dumping a lot of energy. It's got really low recoil as well for what it is. So honestly, I would carry that out of a snub, to be honest. That did pretty well. Now when we look at our 45, we went through our back rib simulation and we went to 20.5 inches, and I'll pull this out here so you can see this back rib simulation. Probably tumbled through. Yeah, see, we're going through sideways like that. It's tumbling through. So the over penetration wasn't significant, and it is still a 45 caliber bullet. And overall, this did a little better than what I assumed. I did test this out of the 5-inch barrel once, like years ago, and I was still shooting baloney, but I was shooting baloney packs into the gel. I did that for a really brief period of like a couple months. And with that, I didn't get any expansion, I think, through any of my shots, if I remember right. So I wasn't very hopeful of this, but with this, I actually did better than what it did several years ago out of the 5-inch barrel. So it's still a 45 caliber bullet. It's still going to do a lot of damage, even if it doesn't expand. And to answer my question of what would I have done well if I needed it back in the day, it probably still would have, because it's a 45, and 45s are cutting a big hole regardless. But I don't think it would do as well as a properly performing 9mm plus P or 357 Magnum that can expand every time out of a short barrel. But not terrible performance overall. It still works. So let's pull these out of the block, take a close-up look at them, and then we're going to shoot our steel and see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets going through plain gel, our 357 Magnum and our 45 ACP. And these things expanded wickedly, especially that 45. And that thing has some massive amount of expansion going on there with these really, really sharp petals. And then our 357 Magnum to plain gel. You know, not quite as big, but just very impressive overall. Not bad performance. Now everything changes up when we go through our rib simulation and our fabric. 45 completely failed. Our 357 Magnum actually looks larger than what it did going through plain gel. It's really, really big expansion. And our 45 ACP, yeah, that clogged with denim, and that alone prevented that expansion. It's amazing how something so insignificant seeming can change things quite a bit. Now it is a 230 grain, and it did tumble, and that, you know, width going sideways can cause a lot of damage, you know, because if you got like a 357 here and you compare it like that, well, the 45 is actually a little bit wider long-wise when it's tumbling. So it can do okay, but that's not a predictable way to get damaged. So I'm just trying to like give it props for what it is, but at the same time, it's still a failure on that 45. So that's a close-up look at those bullets. All right, 14 yards from the target, so I'm just going to get a front sight picture and pop these off as fast as I think I can hit the target, as if I'm simulating a self-defense scenario. The reason why I do 14 yards is because, you know, I figure this kind of simulates 7 yards when your adrenaline's pumping, because if I'm more calm here and I double that distance, this kind of tells me what I think I would see in a real situation at 7 yards. So I'm not going for groups, I'm just popping these off as fast as I think I can hit the target. So 357 Magnum, let's see what I can do with this thing. There we go again, Winchester. Light primer strike. And it's not my guns, it's not my guns. I'm testing stuff all the time here when I'm doing this. The only time I've had issues with light primer strikes has been with CCI primers, Magnum primers, and with Winchester ammo. It's the only time I've had issues over the past couple of months. So, yeah, barely a dimple there. I'm gonna fire that one single action, and we'll keep going. All right, not too bad overall. Now, our 45. I do put these in my pockets the same way every time. I'm very careful. There's nothing else in my pocket when I pull these out. The first round in here is that one I had a light primer strike on when I was chronographing the rounds. So let's see if this first round will go off. Alright, so yeah, this does jump a little bit, and I'm, you know, some people criticize my grip because I do more of a revolver grip because I don't want to get in the habit of doing this when I'm shooting revolvers. But if I get in the habit of doing a revolver grip on a semi-auto, who cares? Plus my rheumatoid arthritis, I don't really grip with this hand anyway, so you'll see it kind of slip, but hey, it still works for me. So let me back it up and shoot slow from a little more distance and see how these would do just from a little bit more distance. All right, 40 yards from the target just for fun, so I'm going to slow fire these and just see how these will do from 40 yards. So 357 Magnum. Here we go again with Winchester. Give me light primer strikes. And I'm going to say this again in case people fast forward. It's not this gun. Because you don't come out and test ammo weekly and have nothing have a problem except Winchester ammo. So yeah, they just got some hard primers there. It's just not working with this gun. So I'm gonna go single action on that shot. Give it a little bit harder primer strike when you do that. And I'll keep going. Not bad overall for what it is. It's very predictable as far as its accuracy goes for me. I've not seen anything weird there. I just don't like the primer issues, and you know, and if you don't believe me, why did I get one in this gun as well? This is a brand new pistol. It's those Winchester primers. I'll keep going with our 45. Let's see how this thing does for me. Huh, I don't know where that went. That is weird. I don't know where these are going. Alright, so those last two hits I aimed at the head on that silhouette. And I just think that the point of aim and impact with these is way off from what I'm used to, because I came out yesterday with the Gold Dot G2 carry gun, and I nailed every single shot from here. And I was doing the exact same thing I'm doing today. So the misses I saw were hitting like really, really low. So maybe it's just the different bullet weights causing me some problems here. I don't think it's me. I know it sounds arrogant, but I don't think it's me. I just think that the bullet weight with this pistol, these particular sights, is just kind of, it's not wanting to hit in the same place as some of the other ammo I've been testing. So looking at this overall, I'm glad I got to come out and test this, because I've been wondering about this for like 10 years if this stuff was any good, because I just picked it as my carry gun. I went to like a local store, I think, back in early 2016, and I'm like, stop the threat. To buy a jacket at Hollow Point, and then I'm going on Winchester's website, looking at the information that they get with it or give with it, and they just tell you all these different things and what the ammo does, and I just went with it. I mean, that sounds silly now for someone like me, but I really wasn't testing stuff back then. So I think, you know, YouTube and the people that test ammo, not just me, but a lot of other people, it is an important service that we do, because you can't trust what ammo companies are saying for the most part. Now, if I would recommend one ammo that you can kind of trust, ammo company, I would say Federal. Most of their stuff that they say is pretty close to what you really get. Not everything, but most of it is pretty close. You know, you're gonna get pretty much what you think you're gonna get. Every other company though, questionable. So not terrible performance, pretty good with the 357 Magnum, mediocre with the 45. you know, or reliability with those primers, that kind of seals the deal for me. I don't think they're good, but if you think your gun can set these primers off and you test it and it works for you, you know, the 357 mag here isn't that bad of an option because it is a very low recoiling round. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.